My name is Fred, and I work as a mechanic in an auto shop in Dallas, Texas. I'm 32 years old, been married to Rebecca for 8 years. I thought I knew my wife inside and out. Turns out I was dead wrong. It all started 3 months ago when I met Victoria at the gas station near my workplace. She worked as a cashier there, sweet smile, long blonde hair, about 25 years old. We just talked at first, casual conversations while I was filling up my truck after work. But gradually something sparked between us. I knew it was wrong, but I couldn't stop myself. Rebecca worked at an insurance company downtown, often staying late for client meetings or paperwork. This gave me the perfect opportunity to meet with Victoria. At first, it was just coffee after her shifts, innocent enough. But then it escalated. Dinner dates, weekend trips when Rebecca thought I was fishing with my buddy Jake, expensive gifts. I started spending money on Victoria. Lots of money. Designer handbags, jewelry, romantic dinners at upscale restaurants I'd never taken my own wife to. I even paid for her interior design courses at the local community college, $2,000 that she said would help her build a better future. The money came from our joint savings account, the one Rebecca and I had opened specifically for buying a house. Over 2 months, I blew almost $20,000 on Victoria. When Rebecca asked about the decreasing balance, I told her I'd invested the money in upgrading the auto shop with my partner, Carlos. She believed me, she always trusted me with our finances. That trust would come back to haunt me. The affair wasn't just about physical attraction. Victoria made me feel young again, exciting. She laughed at my jokes, seemed genuinely interested in my stories about fixing cars. With Rebecca, conversations had become routine: work, bills, weekend plans. With Victoria, everything felt electric and new. I started lying constantly. Telling Rebecca I was working overtime when I was actually at Victoria's apartment. Creating fake fishing trips with Jake, who had no idea he was my alibi. I even bought a separate phone to text Victoria, hiding it in my toolbox at work. The guilt was eating me alive, but I couldn't stop. Every time I decided to end it with Victoria, she'd smile that perfect smile or mention how grateful she was for everything I was doing for her education and future. I felt needed, wanted in a way that had faded in my marriage. Rebecca and I had been trying to have kids for 2 years without success. The stress of fertility treatments, the disappointment month after month, had created distance between us. Victoria offered an escape from all that pressure and sadness. One morning in late October, as I was getting ready for work, Rebecca said something that made my blood run cold. "Fred, we need to talk about money tonight. The bank called yesterday about some irregularities in our account." My heart stopped. I nodded, grabbed my coffee, and left for work, my mind racing with possible explanations for the missing funds. All day at the shop I couldn't concentrate. I dropped a wrench on my foot, nearly stripped the threads on an oil drain plug, and Carlos asked me twice if I was feeling all right. I kept thinking about what Rebecca might have discovered and how I could explain it away. That evening, I walked into our small 2-bedroom apartment to find Rebecca sitting at the kitchen table with several manila folders spread out in front of her. Her laptop was open, and she had that look on her face, the same expression she wore when reviewing insurance claims at work. "Sit down," she said calmly, not looking up from the papers. "What's all this about?" I tried to sound casual, but my voice cracked slightly. "About Victoria Chambers. About the Riverside Steakhouse where you took her last Tuesday. About the jewelry store purchase for $800. About the interior design courses you paid for." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. How could she possibly know all these details? "I hired a private investigator 6 weeks ago," Rebecca continued, still speaking in that terrifyingly calm voice. "When I noticed unusual charges on our joint credit card and withdrawals from our savings account." She opened one of the folders and spread out photographs. There I was, clear as day, holding hands with Victoria outside a restaurant. Another photo showed us kissing in the parking lot of her apartment complex. Another showed me carrying shopping bags, walking next to Victoria as she admired what looked like jewelry. "Rebecca, I can explain everything." "No need," she interrupted. "I already know everything I need to know." She opened another folder, this one filled with bank statements, credit card bills, and receipts. Every purchase was highlighted in yellow, every dinner, every gift, every payment for Victoria's classes. $22,347, Rebecca said, reading from a handwritten ledger. "That's exactly how much you spent on your girlfriend over the past 10 weeks. The number hit me like a sledgehammer. I hadn't realized it was that much. "Listen carefully, Fred. I've already filed for divorce. The papers will be served tomorrow morning. Rebecca, please give me a chance to fix this." "Fix this." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. You spent our house down payment on another woman. You lied to my face every single day for months. What exactly do you think you can fix? I was desperate now. I'll pay it all back. I'll sell my truck, take out a loan, work extra shifts. It's too late for that, she stood up from the table. But there's something else you need to know. Rebecca walked to the kitchen counter and picked up my phone and laptop, devices I was sure I'd left in the bedroom. While you were at work today, I changed the passwords to all your accounts. Banking, social media, email, everything. What? You can't do that. I can, and I did. I'm your wife and those are joint accounts. Or rather, they were joint accounts. She handed me a stack of bank statements I'd never seen before. All the remaining money from our accounts, $18,000, I transferred to my personal account. The one I opened 3 years ago that you didn't know about. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. That's stealing. No, Fred. That's justice. You robbed our family by spending $22,000 on your mistress. I'm simply reclaiming what's left of our future. The full weight of the situation began to sink in. What about the mortgage? The car payments? The credit cards? Those are your problem now. I'm moving out tomorrow morning. I've already put a deposit down on an apartment downtown. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I realized she had planned this entire confrontation down to the last detail. Rebecca, please, we can work through this. You know what the worst part is, Fred? It's not even the cheating. It's the lying. Every morning when you kissed me goodbye, every evening when you came home and asked about my day, every night when you said you loved me, you were lying. She went to our bedroom and returned with 2 suitcases I hadn't noticed were missing from the closet. I'm only taking my personal belongings. Everything else is yours. Along with all the debt. Where are you going? My sister's place in Houston. Just until I find a job and get settled there. I watched helplessly as the woman I'd been married to for 8 years prepared to walk out of my life forever. What about Victoria? Rebecca asked, pausing at the front door. I don't know. I hope she was worth our 8 years of marriage, our plans for children, our dream house, and our entire future together. When the door closed behind Rebecca, I sat alone in our apartment, fully grasping the magnitude of what I'd lost. The bank accounts were empty. The credit card bills, mortgage payments, car loans, all of it was now solely my responsibility. My mechanic's salary barely covered half of our monthly expenses. I called Victoria that same night, hoping for some comfort, maybe some understanding. Fred, I'm really sorry about what happened, but I can't continue our relationship, she said before I could even explain the situation. This is all too complicated for me. I think it's best if we don't see each other anymore. Even Victoria abandoned me. The woman I'd destroyed my marriage for wanted nothing to do with me now that the money had stopped flowing. The following days passed in a haze of panic and regret. The bank sent notices about overdue payments. Credit card companies called constantly. A lawyer's letter arrived stating that the mortgage company would begin foreclosure proceedings if I missed 2 more payments. I tried to find out if I could recover the money through the courts, but the attorney I consulted said my chances were minimal since the funds came from joint accounts. Technically, Rebecca had as much right to the money as I did. The divorce papers arrived exactly when Rebecca said they would. The terms were harsh but fair. She wasn't claiming any portion of the apartment, but she also wasn't helping with any of the debts I'd accumulated. Within a month, I had to sell my truck to make the mortgage payment. I moved out of our apartment and into a tiny room I rented from a coworker. The shame was unbearable. Everyone at the shop knew something was wrong, but I couldn't bring myself to tell them the truth. I picked up a second job working nights at a 24-hour diner, washing dishes and cleaning tables. Between both jobs, I was working 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to keep my head above water financially. 3 months after Rebecca left, I received a short email from her. She'd found a good job with an insurance company in Houston and was starting to rebuild her life. She didn't mention whether she was seeing anyone new, and I didn't have the right to ask. The apartment we'd shared for 5 years went into foreclosure. I couldn't afford a lawyer to fight it, so I just let it happen. My credit score plummeted to the point where I couldn't even get approved for a basic credit card. Victoria had moved on quickly too. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she'd finished her design courses and was dating some guy who owned a construction company. She'd completely cut me out of her life the moment I became a liability instead of an asset. 6 months after the confrontation, I was living in a studio apartment in the worst part of town, working 3 part-time jobs to pay off the massive debt I'd created. The interior design courses I'd paid for Victoria? She used that education to build a successful career. The jewelry I'd bought her? probably sold or given to her new boyfriend. I tried dating again, but who wants to be with a guy who lives in a roach-infested studio apartment and works 70 hours a week just to make minimum payments on debt? My social life became non-existent. Most of my friends had been couple friends with Rebecca and me, and they naturally sided with her after the divorce. The loneliness was crushing, but it was nothing compared to the guilt. Every morning, I woke up thinking about how different my life would be if I just stayed faithful to Rebecca. We'd probably own that house by now. Maybe we'd have finally gotten pregnant. We'd still be planning weekend trips and talking about our future together. Instead, I was a 33-year-old divorced mechanic with no assets, no savings, and debt that would take years to pay off. The worst part was how methodically Rebecca had executed her plan. Looking back, I realized she'd been gathering evidence for weeks before confronting me. The private investigator she hired wasn't cheap, probably cost her $3,000 or $4,000. But it was worth it to her to have ironclad proof of my betrayal. She'd also been quietly preparing for life after our marriage. That personal bank account she mentioned? She'd been putting away small amounts for years, money I never knew about. While I was bleeding our joint savings dry for Victoria, Rebecca was secretly building her escape fund. The timing of her confrontation was perfect too. She waited until I'd spent enough money to make reconciliation impossible, but not so long that I could drain everything. She'd calculated exactly when to pull the trigger for maximum impact. I started having panic attacks at work. The stress of juggling multiple jobs, the constant calls from creditors, the humiliation of living in squalor, it all became overwhelming. Carlos, my partner at the auto shop, eventually sat me down and demanded to know what was going on. When I finally told him the truth, he just shook his head in disappointment. "Fred, you had a good woman and a good life. Why would you throw that away for some young girl?" I couldn't answer him because I didn't really know myself. The excitement? The ego boost? The thrill of doing something forbidden? None of it seemed worth it now. My health started deteriorating from the stress and overwork. I lost 30 pounds in 6 months, not because I was trying to, but because I often forgot to eat between my 3 jobs. Dark circles under my eyes became permanent fixtures. My hands, which had always been steady enough for delicate mechanical work, started shaking from exhaustion and anxiety. The studio apartment I rented was in a neighborhood where sirens wailed constantly and gunshots weren't uncommon at night. My neighbors included a drug dealer who operated out of the unit next door and a woman who screamed at her boyfriend every night until 3 a.m. This was my new reality, a far cry from the quiet suburban apartment Rebecca and I had shared. I tried calling Rebecca once, about 8 months after she left. I'd been drinking, something I'd started doing more often to numb the pain, and I thought maybe I could convince her to give me another chance. Her number had been changed. When I tried reaching out through her sister, I was told in no uncertain terms never to contact Rebecca again. A year later, I ran into Rebecca's sister at a grocery store. She told me Rebecca had gotten promoted to regional manager and was engaged to a lawyer she'd met through work. They were planning a wedding for the following spring. "She's happy now," her sister said, looking at me with a mixture of pity and disgust. "Happier than she ever was with you." That night, I sat in my empty studio apartment and realized that Rebecca had done exactly what she needed to do. She'd protected herself from my betrayal and irresponsibility. She'd been smarter and stronger than me in every way. The engagement news hit me harder than I expected. I found myself imagining Rebecca in a wedding dress, walking down the aisle to marry someone who would never lie to her, never cheat on her, never steal from their joint accounts to fund an affair. Someone who deserved her in ways I never had. I started seeing a therapist, not by choice, but because my work performance had declined so much that Carlos threatened to fire me unless I got help. The sessions were covered by the shop's basic health insurance, one of the few benefits I still had. Dr. Martinez, my therapist, helped me understand that my affair wasn't really about Victoria at all. It was about my own insecurities, my fear of commitment, my selfish need for validation. But understanding the psychology behind my actions didn't make the consequences any less devastating. "You made choices," Dr. Martinez would remind me during our sessions. "And choices have consequences. The question now is, what are you going to choose to do moving forward?" But moving forward felt impossible when I was drowning in the past. The debt collectors had become more aggressive. One particularly persistent agency started calling my workplace, embarrassing me in front of customers and coworkers. I had to change my phone number twice to get some peace. 2 years after the divorce, I finally managed to pay off the credit card debt, but only by declaring bankruptcy and destroying what little credit I had left. The foreclosure on our old apartment had already ruined my credit score, so bankruptcy felt like just another nail in the coffin. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Victoria had indeed used her interior design education to start her own business. She was featured in a local magazine as one of Houston's rising young entrepreneurs. The irony wasn't lost on me. My money had helped launch her successful career while simultaneously destroying my own life. Sometimes I walked past the house Rebecca and I had planned to buy. New owners lived there now, a young couple with 2 small children. I watched them through the windows sometimes, seeing the life Rebecca and I should have had. The husband would come home from work and kiss his wife. The kids would run to greet him. It was everything I'd given up for a few months of meaningless excitement. The worst moments came late at night when I couldn't sleep. I'd lie awake in my cramped studio, listening to the sounds of the city, and think about all the little moments I'd lost with Rebecca. The way she'd curl up next to me while watching movies. How she'd make coffee in the morning and leave little notes in my lunchbox. The plans we'd made for our future children's names, their bedrooms, their college funds. All of it was gone, traded away for memories that now felt dirty and shameful. I'd had everything a man could want: a loving wife, a stable home, financial security, and a future full of possibilities. I threw it all away for a fantasy that lasted less than 3 months. The affair with Victoria hadn't been worth losing Rebecca. It hadn't been worth the debt, the stress, or the complete destruction of the life we'd built together. It certainly hadn't been worth the man I'd become, bitter, alone, and drowning in consequences I'd created for myself. Sometimes I wonder if Rebecca planned it all from the beginning, letting me dig myself deeper and deeper into debt and deception before pulling the rug out from under me. But honestly, I don't blame her. I deserved everything that happened to me. She'd given me 8 years of her life, her trust, her love, and her dreams for our future. In return, I'd given her lies, betrayal, and financial ruin. The fact that she'd managed to turn the tables and come out stronger while I collapsed under the weight of my own choices just proved how much better she deserved than what I'd given her. Now, 3 years later, I'm still paying for those 10 weeks of selfishness and stupidity. Rebecca has her new life, her successful career, and someone who actually deserves her love and loyalty. And I have exactly what I earned through my choices: nothing but regret and the daily reminder that some mistakes can't be undone, some trust can't be rebuilt, and some people, once they're gone, are gone forever. Thank you for watching the video to the end. Maybe YouTube will no longer offer you my channel, so subscribe to it by clicking subscribe on the right under the video to receive new interesting stories. Also on the right of the video there is a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to, and you can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.